Welcome, everyone. Happy New Year. Thanks for joining. This is our first webinar, first panel event to kick off 2026, and I'm personally thrilled you're all here. Today is Tuesday, January 6th. We're thankful for this meeting of our bicycle industry retailer-focused e-bike safety and standards panel. We're going on 2 years, panel members. Thanks for all the great conversations that we've had over the years and all the resources we've brought forward to the industry. For 2026, this will be a tri-annual platform, so we'll meet 3 times. And during those meetings, we hope to provide a chance for industry experts to meet, discuss, and address retailer risks, concerns, and best practices regarding lithium-ion batteries and e-mobility devices. We talk about safety, standards, and compliance. The panel members who are here have completely volunteered their time and expertise into the discussion. The NBDA, we are so thankful for your continued support of this conversation. Without you, we would not have these events. So thank you so much for continuing to show up and lend your insight to the conversation. A lot of energy has gone into making this platform a resource not just for retailers, but the industry at large. Special thanks to Megan Schmidt, NBDA Programs Director, who does all the organization behind the scenes to make this happen. This is an opportunity for us to work united, work collectively. We hope that the conversation does today propel us forward into continued growth of e-bike sales, such an important category. We also hope that this conversation propels the growth of e-bike participation with limited risk and rider safety for all. So with that, if you're viewing as a participant, as an attendee today, we do want this conversation to be interactive. So if you would like to lend your insight, ask questions to the panel members, or otherwise get involved, you can do so by using the Q&A or place your questions or comments into the chat function. All of us panel members do have access to respond back to your questions. Some questions we might just open up live and answer as a collective group, and others we might just respond back in chat. So we will be here, so go ahead and please do get involved in the conversation. All of these experts are here to address the topics that we have today, but also to answer your questions. So please find the next 60 minutes to be incredibly valuable. So with that, just one final thing about working in partnership, being here for the good. Our topics today have been selected by retailers submitting to us their questions and us bringing forward topics that we thought would be most beneficial to the conversation. The speakers who have, our panel members who have elected to speak, the opportunity is for them to give 5 minutes or so uninterrupted. So sometimes our opinions might personally differ from the speaker's opinions, but that's the awesomeness of this platform. So we can listen, we can absorb, we can agree, we can not agree, but we do always believe that just hearing what others have to say about topics can maybe give us some insight and might kind of direct us forward in a direction we didn't know we wanted to go. So this is a safe place. We respect one another, and we'll just leave that there. So we do have a special presentation to kick off today's meeting. Mr. Jay Townley of Human Powered Solutions, he's going to share a special presentation titled What is and What is Not a Bicycle. Jay, thanks for being here.
Thank you, Heather. And thank you, Megan, for running the slides. As the title says, what is and what is not a bicycle? As this year, 2026, begins, the public and local licensing and regulatory authorities are confused about and struggling with what a bicycle is, and worse yet, what is not a bicycle. As this slide indicates, in 2002, Congress clarified federal jurisdiction by consolidating bicycles and low-speed electric bicycles in one single definition, and in passing Public Law 107-319, which removed low-speed electric bicycles from regulation by the Department of Transportation and its National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, and placed them under the authority of the U.S. Consumer Product Safety Commission, CPSC. Next slide, please. Accordingly, in 2002, CPSC amended 16 CFR 1512.2 definitions. As you see here, a bicycle is defined in section 1512.2 as either one, a two-wheeled vehicle having a rear drive wheel solely human-powered, or two, a two- or three-wheeled vehicle with fully operable pedals and an electric motor of less than 750 watts, that's 1 horsepower, whose maximum speed on a paved level surface, when powered solely by such a motor while ridden by an operator who weighs 170 pounds, is less than 20 miles per hour. Now, this is the definition. It's got some technicalities in it. As Mike can explain, who is a degreed mechanical engineer, what the 170 pounds and the speed are important here because they establish what the U.S. Bureau of Standards and CPSC tested to provide the safest, from their standpoint, definition of these products as possible. Now, while the bicycle industry and certain local and state jurisdictions, have made an effort to expand this definition through introduction of the class system for purposes of regulating the public operation of low-speed electric bicycles, preemptive federal jurisdiction, as spelled out in Public Law 107-319 and defined in 16 CFR 1512.2, governing the manufacturing and product safety regulation of a bicycle, has remained constant and unchanged. Next slide, please. This has left electric bicycles with fully operable pedals. Could you go? Yeah, thank you. With fully operable pedals whose maximum speed on a paved level surface when powered solely by an electric motor of less than 750 watts, 1 horsepower, while ridden by an operator who weighs 170 pounds at more than 20 miles an hour, as out of class or currently undefined and unregulated. In sorting out the current regulatory confusion, it's vitally important that all out-of-class electric bicycles, sometimes referred to as Class 3 and Class 4, be properly defined and regulated by the U.S. Department of Transportation because they do not fall within the CPSC definition of a bicycle that we referenced earlier. Next slide, please. Additionally, e-motos and all electric vehicles without fully operable pedals, powered by electric motors of more than 750 watts, again, over 1 horsepower, while ridden by an operator who weighs 170 pounds at more than 20 miles per hour, need to be properly defined and regulated by the U.S. Department of Transportation because they do not fall within the CPSC definition of a bicycle. Next slide, please. Now, this actually is the presentation. I'll be more than happy to get into answering questions, but I also suggest that you could follow up with me by calling 1-608-385-3077, as shown on the screen. That's my cell or my mobile. It's always with me, as Mike can attest, and Heather. Or you can email me at jay@humanpoweredsolutions.com. And I'll be more than happy to discuss, engage in, or try to answer the questions that you have. Now, if you want to, Heather, if you want to take some questions now, we can. Otherwise, any of the folks that are listening in or the panel themselves certainly could call me or email me to do follow-up.
Thank you so much, Jay. It's important that we do start with the basics, right? Sometimes our industry, we're just moving forward, especially since COVID, at a very rapid pace. And it's nice to just come back to the basic definition of what is and what is not a bicycle. With e-motos now creating a conversation in many municipalities for many retailers, I'm hearing, what do we sell them? Do we service them? What do we do? I think clearly defining what is and what is not a bicycle is a great place to start. We do have we have a question that did come in. Can we get a copy? And yes, we will be sharing this out, so we will do that. Yes, perfect. Jay, let's leave it there. But if anyone does have questions, we can further address those as we move along today. Thank you so much.
Exactly. Thank you.
Thank you, Megan, for sharing the slide. Oh, well, let's do this one question because I think that this is a good one, Jay, and then we'll go from there.
Okay.
Dan has asked, why would Class 3 e-bikes not be included in the definition of an e-bike?
They were not included when CPSC developed the definition based on Congress passing the public law requiring CPSC to define bicycles and low-speed electric bicycles. It's because they are not in that mandatory federal reg that we're stating that they need to be regulated. So, in other words, the class three is a use requirement or a use classification developed by the industry and in turn has been taken in many forms by state legislatures and regulators. But it is not encoded in the federal reg. It is not a federal requirement. So, therefore, manufacturers and importers do not have to meet that definition. Class three does not exist within the mandatory federal reg. What I've shown you on the screen, and you also use NBDA, would be more than happy to send you the PDF of this because all I did was basically read what we've got laid out in the statement as a guide to dealers. But classes or the class system is a use system. It is not a regulation for the manufacture and retail sale of these products. That definition that CPSC developed is.
Yeah, thank you, Jay. Um, a follow-up question, have efforts been made to regulate currently out of class e-motos, and have those efforts failed?
At this point, I believe there's several members of the panel, including Clint, that can get into what the state legislatures have been doing. But yes, there's a real attempt to regulate e-motos, and that's part of the problem here because now we've got much more confusion out in the legislative arenas and also the Aaron within the uh, ordinances, the city ordinances, because the e-motos and Mike can get into the detail, but the speeds here exceed 30 miles an hour.
Yeah.
And the inertia masses they're creating are creating injuries, they're creating fatalities, they're creating problems of disruption in traffic patterns well beyond. And that's the reason we wanted to be sure that it's clear what the definition of a bicycle is, which includes light electric or e-bikes, and what is not encoded or not covered within the mandatory CPSC federal reg.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, I'll just follow up with that, and then we do have another question. Just one follow up there. The NBDA has been in some conversations with municipalities who are trying to understand and regulate. And with that, we have found that they're looking at, well, what is a bicycle? And starting just with that conversation. In our development with those conversations, we've even noted that some insurance companies um, don't see class three as an actual bicycle, and there's a risk for retailers. So while we know class three is an important category for many retailers, um, we would still advise you to check with your insurance company to make sure you are covered to sell class three. So little things, but they make a big impact and could potentially come back and pose a significant impact in your business if you're not covered. So that's what we mean, just coming back to basics, just to make sure everyone's business is looked out for. The final question I have here is, besides speed, power also impacts what is and what is not an e-bike. Anything above 750 watts mechanical output power is not an e-bike. Your input, Jay?
Well, as Michael explained, and I think others in the panel know, we're talking about what CPSC has carefully worked out. They've had engineers look very carefully at this definition. And the weight of the rider, by the way, can be adjusted. This is for test purposes, folks. This is not trying to specify the weight of a rider out in the commercial world. This is in order to establish the regulatory language that is used to create the testing that the products are certified to, which is also what NBDA is advising the dealers to do. Make sure they're getting properly tested and certified product tested by a nationally recognized test lab, a NERDL. But it's the weight and the speed, and I believe it's already been put into some of the questions. But the engineers on the panel can certainly explain why that's important and why that has to be carefully recognized and taken into account. But believe me, CPSC and the National Bureau of Standards have worked very hard on establishing what they feel are the speeds and from this standpoint, the power that are involved in creating the envelope of definition for what would be the safest product that could be purveyed to the public.
Thank you, Jay. Yeah. And we had an insurance agent, Joanne Betty, who's on the call, who says, as an insurance agent, she can totally agree that there is much confusion with many of the bike clients as to what is a bicycle and what is not. So yeah, for retailers listening to this, please do check in with your insurance company to make sure that if class 3 is an important category for you, that you understand, make sure that you're covered and you understand your risks there. Anything else from our panel members on this topic before we move on? This is just bridging this topic. I'm sure there'll be further conversation, potentially even this afternoon as we move into our topics today. All right. Well, Jay, I'm sure you'll have some follow-up as well. Thank you all. So let's go to topic number one. Again, these topics are suggested to the NBDA through our membership, through our community. This topic is bridging the regulatory patchwork, helping e-bike owners navigate local laws. Further, we go into with e-bike regulations differing across states, provinces, and even municipalities, how can retailers and manufacturers work together to clearly communicate legal practices and ensure riders understand what's allowed where they ride? So our speaker today is Erin Lafarge, Director of Safety Policy, New York City Department of Transportation. Erin, thanks for joining us.
Hi, yeah, happy to be here. Let me share. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about the laws and how we got here. I think, as Jay said, it's useful to understand a little bit about how and why the laws are the way they are and why they're changing. Um, but also just to understand, there's so many different kinds of regulations that come in here every time you talk about an e-bike. So I'm going to go through a little bit of all of those different things. So why is it important for us to understand the patchwork? For riders, it's just incredibly confusing. A bike that is legal on one street may not be legal on another. The speed limit might be different on one street versus another. And understanding those rules, there's a lot of risks, right? They risk tickets, they risk confiscation. There's insurance concerns for retailers, and this is very important for us from a city government point of view. The point of sale is really often the only uh, communication tool that many riders actually have to get a lot of this information. They rely on asking retailers when they go into the store, well, is this bike legal? Is it legal in which cases? What's the right bike for me? And it's a great opportunity for us to make sure that the correct information is being shared with consumers at that point. So we like to work a lot with retailers in the city to make sure that information is being shared appropriately. And I'm going to come back to how we do that at the end a little bit. But just to start, as Jay said, there's federal rules that are about consumer protection, and that guides how the devices are created. But most of the laws that riders are actually concerned about are made at the state level. That defines the classes, it defines what speeds they can go, it defines what wattage they can have, it defines how old they need to be, or whether they need helmets or license or registration, what the penalties are. Most of those rules are set at the state level. Then on top of that, there are local rules. So in New York City, we set specific speed limits, for example, or what can and cannot go in our particular bike lanes. One of our most recent law changes in New York City just 2 months ago, a new local rule was created that requires that e-bikes of any type to only be ridden up to 15 miles per hour in any context. So on the vehicle travel lanes, in a bike lane, wherever they are, there's now a cap for the speed that an e-bike can go of any class. And then there's local land managers, and that is for things like parks. We have a lot of parks. Parks have different rules depending on the type and the type of roadways. And so understanding all of these different things, it can be very complicated for riders. And you guys as retailers can have a really powerful impact on sort of breaking down some of those rules. I think it's important to understand the state system that we have was really created in large part by a model legislation promoted by People for Bikes that designed this three-class system. And most of the states across the country now use this three-class system, but not all. In New York, when we first passed e-bike laws, we did not adopt this three-class system, but then a couple of years later ended up adopting this three-class system, although ours is slightly different. Um, and I think that one of the confusions that has occurred is that this system, it doesn't really take into account the existing vehicle laws in most states. It doesn't reconcile e-bikes with existing moped laws, for example. And so it's raised now a lot of questions that have led to people rethinking some of what this actually means. I'll just give you an example in New York. So our class 3 e-bikes here, they can have pedal assist or a throttle, and they're capped at 25 miles per hour instead of 28. A class 3 e-bike here does not need a license or registration. It doesn't need insurance or things like that. But a moped in New York City, which is technically called a limited use motorcycle under the law, that can only go 20 miles per hour, does require license and registration. And one that goes 30 miles requires license, registration, and insurance. And so there's an overlap between one type of motorized vehicle and a different type of motorized vehicle and what they're allowed to do. And mopeds here are not allowed in bike lanes, even the ones that go up to 20 miles, that can only go up to 20 miles per hour. Whereas e-bikes that can go up to 25 miles per hour are allowed in bike lanes. And so there's some inconsistency in the regulatory framework around all of these different motorized vehicles. And then, as you all are aware, there has been a huge amount of press around the dangers of e-bikes. I'm going to caveat this up front by saying that there is nothing more deadly to humans in this country than vehicles and than large motor vehicles, cars and trucks and things like that. For both pedestrians and for motor vehicle occupants, the dangers of e-bikes do not come anywhere close to the level of injury and fatality caused by motor vehicles. However, we have seen a steady increase in e-bike injuries and fatalities. Some of that is, just about e-bikes by themselves, and some of that is as we get these new types of e-bikes that are not really e-bikes. I'll show you a picture in a moment. And if you look here, the photograph is from a fatality that occurred in New York City where a pedestrian was killed when she was struck by somebody riding an e-bike. This is that e-bike. This does not meet any definition of e-bike in New York City. You can see the top speed is 37.5 miles per hour, but it has pedals. And for us, our e-bike definition is if it has pedals, it's an e-bike. If it doesn't have pedals, it's not an e-bike. Now we have speed caps on that, but I think that what you're seeing is manufacturers, well, if they throw pedals on a thing, all of these have throttles, right? You don't have to actually pedal them. The pedals, they operate, but they're still largely for show. And if you throw pedals on it, then you sort of get around visually a lot of enforcement because now you have a vehicle that looks like an e-bike. And so I think that the combination of the original way that these rules were created, plus this addition of now these are sort of e-motos. I think a lot of the e-motos we don't actually have pedals, like we have actual electric motorcycles and they don't bother to put pedals on them at all. But there's this whole in between category that we're very concerned about nationally for sure. And this you don't need a retailer for. You can order this online. This is not the case everywhere. In Europe, they have two classifications of e-bikes. They have classic pedelecs, and those can only go 15 miles per hour. They have speed pedelecs. Those go up to 28 miles per hour. Those would be our class 3, and there they require license, registration, and insurance. They're considered a moped. They're not allowed in bike lanes. But there are states here that also have similar regulations. Pennsylvania also has this two-tiered system. Pennsylvania has a pedal cycle with electric assist capped at 20 miles per hour and a motorized pedal cycle that's capped at 25. New Jersey has low-speed electric, which is their class 1 and class 2, and motorized bicycles, which is their class 3. But it also actually includes mopeds. Mopeds are also classified under the motorized bicycle, and they require license, registration, and insurance. So there are a number of states that even when they do adopt the 3-class system, have separated vehicles that go over 20 from vehicles that go under 20. There may be some questions as we go through, because I know New Jersey is in the process of they have some legislation that may change a lot of this to make it even more restrictive than this is right now. But even in New York, class three e-bikes are only legal in New York City. They're prohibited in the entire rest of the state. So this is the confusion that I understand all of you are concerned about. These are many different types of regulations, and I think that e-bikes are just still so new. Over the last 10 or so years have really been adopted en masse that we're going to continue to see these regulations start to catch up with the actual reality on the ground and fit better into our vehicle and traffic law system. So what are the things that you as retailers should know and be able to speak about with your consumers? One, understanding what the definitions and the classes are of the bikes that you're selling, where those bikes are allowed to ride in your particular environment, what the rider requirements are. Do they need helmets? Are there age restrictions? Um, are they properly labeled, which is a thing that you can know as retailers because you have the bikes on you? Does it need a speedometer? Like in New York, class three bikes do require a speedometer. Class one and two bikes do not require a speedometer. And are there other local rules that apply? And where do you get all of that information? For us, like I said before, we would love to do everything in our power to help retailers pass that information along as much as possible. So we have a lot of resources. One is our website. Um, this is our breakdown of devices and what's required in New York, but a lot of states have a very similar breakdown. Pennsylvania has a chart that looks just like this. Um, and at the very end, I'll show you that resources button goes to our website where we are constantly updating with new information. Anytime there is a change to the law, we add that information in. So you can always be, checking those cheat sheet sources and providing them to consumers. In New York, we also put as much of this information as possible into the bike maps that we distribute. So if you are in New York City and you don't have a big stash of bike maps to hand out to people when they purchase a bike, that is a great way for you and for your consumers to get a lot of this information in their hands right away. Our new 2026 one will come out in the spring. You can follow us on many forms of social media where we are also constantly putting this information and trying to break it down into ways that are very easy to understand. So what's the difference between e-bikes and mopeds? What are the three classes? And then what are the requirements, including a lot about lithium-ion battery safety, because that's been a major focus in New York City. We had a significant peak in uh, uh, battery fires, especially inside buildings, and that has come down dramatically with a lot of public education and outreach. And there we go. And I won't show my, oh, maybe it'll just play anyway. Okay. And that is all I have. Um, I'll stop sharing. I'm happy to answer questions, but really the best advice is to take the role of giving information seriously to your consumers, because that's very important for us. Um, but also we are happy to disseminate as much of those resources to make that easier as possible.
Yeah, Erin, what a fantastic presentation. I mean, I am a New York resident, but I do not live in the city. And hearing that class three e-bikes were prohibited was news to me. Like, so I think there's a lot of retailers who are maybe like, oh, I should definitely check and make sure what is prohibited or allowed. So I love the information you gave. We did have a couple questions that came in. We'll just answer those quickly. Does weight and size impact the definitions in New York? Like a moped might be heavier and larger, so maybe that's more suitable for the street, not a bike lane.
Yeah, so we don't currently have definitions based on weight in New York City, only by speed. And to, the interesting thing is a lot of these heavier e-moto type bikes, e-bikes, they are quite heavy. They do get over 100 pounds. And so the actual difference really in the weight of these vehicles, it matters less than their speed because a lot of them are quite heavy.
Yeah, thanks, Aaron. And then, I'll just ask this to the panel, maybe Aaron as well. Any suggestions on how we can communicate with customers and the public about the out-of-class vehicles, which are largely purchased online, not from a retailer?
I guess the question I would have is, you get questions from people in your stores who are not planning to purchase bikes in your stores? I mean, I think if they come in and they're like, well, should I buy this one online? I think you should provide information to them saying, well, here are what the rules are, and they may not be legal.
Yeah, yeah, Aaron, thank you. A couple panel members also to chime in. Jay Townley, please.
Uh, why don't we let Mike go because you guys have heard from me, and I think my answer would be very much in line with what Aaron said.
Yeah,
Go
thanks.
ahead, Michael.
All right, Michael from Micromobility Connect. Nice to see you.
Thank you. Being a retailer of e-bikes for 15 years, we take the opportunity to educate every consumer that comes in, whether they purchase the e-bike from us or not. It's a great way to show them that you're an expert, you care about the industry, also about safety. So what we do is we print out, and of course there's different municipalities, there's federal, state, municipality, municipal level, like Aaron was saying, with different regulations within that municipality. It's a great idea for retailers to print out those regulations because just telling them is one thing, but actually having a copy right there on paper that's updated, of course, and actually showing them because they're going to hear a lot of things, but you verbally telling them and then saying, here, we have a copy of the regulations, and they could see it with their own eyes and understand what they're driving is illegal and understand maybe what you carry at your store falls within a legal definition. That really makes a lot of sense because it really enforces having it on paper in front of them, what you're saying off the government website. It really does go a long way to educate the consumers. And also when they purchase a bike, you can send a digital copy. You can have paper copies available for them to take. Of course, you're spending the time to get them familiar with their e-bike, just as important of where they can ride it legally, right?
Michael, thank you. Always love your insights. And yes, you see it and you hear it, and it hits a little bit more. And I just made a note, maybe the NBDA can get together some state by state regulations and put it in our member resources so it's easy for our members to tap into that. So my team hates me right now, but it's a good thing. We need to do that. So thank you, Aaron. Thank you for that presentation. It was absolutely excellent. So informative. Any other panel members want to chime in at this point? All right. Okay. Well, let's go to topic number 2. I did see another question come in for a retailer, but we're going to address that after this topic because it goes along with this topic. So topic 2 is electric bicycles versus electric motorcycles, understanding where the real challenges lie. So with e-bikes and electric motorcycles, they're often grouped together in public perception and regulation. How can retailers, manufacturers, and policymakers differentiate the risks, use patterns, safety concerns, and ensure that rules, education, and enforcement target the right issues? So we're really talking about like what is a bicycle? Today's whole panel event is really about understanding the differences. We have 3 panel members who will speak on this. And first, we have Peter Woolery from Bicycle Market Research, who's been doing so much fantastic work to bring data forward to the industry. Peter, thanks for being here.
Absolutely. I appreciate you all allowing me to be here. As many of you know, I do a lot of research on the industry, specifically on direct to consumer as well. So I was hoping to share some of that data. Let's see if it'll let me share that screen. Before I start talking about how we define it within these People for Bikes projects, right, the direct consumer, used, and IBD projects, I first want to mention that when we look at the overall data of e-bikes and our progress in terms of how many people are on e-bikes relative to Europe, if we shift things and we look just at adult e-bikes, in the United States, we've exceeded 20% of total units being electric bikes, which is a pretty significant milestone. It means that we're on par with many European countries, even if we're not up at the 50% level of Germany and Netherlands. I think those are somewhat of exceptions. And that brings us to another point where we were talking about the different state level regulations. The same thing happens in Europe, where, yes, they have an overarching rule or regulation. But if you take their speed pedelecs in Belgium and a couple other countries, those have to be registered. The reason I know that is then I get to see some of the data from that and see how those are growing. They overall started to flatten out in 2025, but used registrations of them went up. Pretty interesting thing. So we're not alone in the United States in having this challenge of how to communicate it. So that pivots me into, in my research and when I present data, how do I define the different segments? Class 1, 2, 3, out of class, and E-moto. Well, class 1 and 2 are pretty straightforward. Class 3, we generally follow the national standard and we ignore, say, like California, which is going to be a little more strict. When we get to out of class here, you can see that in order for me to track it as that, it must have bicycle pedals, right? To Aaron's point, sometimes those are really just for show, but at least this gives us something to point at on that website and say, okay, this is what they are trying to present that product as. If it has more than 750 nominal watts, then I consider it out of class. Nominal, again, that's the national standard, whereas California now has shifted to peak watts. Likewise, if it has dual motors, I put it in the out of class category. Technically, if for some reason they put two really wimpy motors on it and combined they were no one's doing that. So if it has two motors, I just put it in out of class. Same thing if it advertises being able to go greater than 28 miles per hour, right? That Movcan bike that Aaron put up, clearly that's out of class. They're not even really hiding it. And you can see similar here with this image below. This is from just a quick search on Amazon of searching for high-speed e-bike, and a ton of them come up. And then finally, if it lists as having an off-road mode, private mode, something like that, I put it into the out-of-class category because it is easy for someone to just put it in that mode and write it as an out-of-class bike. E-motos are, at least for my research, the ones with pegs and no pedals on them. And that's pretty universally considered an unregistered motorcycle. We see a lot of those. I live in San Jose, California, and I see a lot of groups of young males, pretty much all males, riding these e-motos around, never having license plates. I doubt they have VIN numbers or anything like that. And for my perspective, it really comes down to a failure of enforcement. There are some smaller jurisdictions that have had some success in it. San Jose is challenged in terms of enforcing what they consider minor things like that. As we look at the overall data, and the story has really been for the last couple of years that direct-to-consumer sales have been shifting or channel shifting to other segments toward IBDs. I just pulled up the latest data for 2025. It's not finalized yet, but more than 25% of e-bike dollars in direct-to-consumer came from out-of-class electric bikes, which is pretty significant. Now, that's up from 21% last year. The reason why that increased so much is partially because of class 2 and 3 channel shifting to the IBD segment, where a lot more IBDs are tolerant of throttles, meaning the overall DTC e-bike sales have actually shrunk a little, and thus, the portion or the segment of that pie that is out of class has increased. But also, IBDs are generally shying away from out of class and certainly e-motos. There are some who will do it, but there's a lot of concerns over certainly the insurance of it, but also the liability. And we see some of that when we take brands like Super 73, which historically was a little loose with how they were defining things and how they were promoting the speed and how to bypass it. As legal challenges have come up, we've seen their posturing shift toward presenting their bikes more as class 2. You can certainly make arguments that it's still easy to bypass, but at least the mindset of these brands as they grow changes to be more in line with that landscape. And that brings up that it's not just the legislative side of things. It's not just the municipalities that are going to make these changes, but it's really the legal system. And that's what a lot of businesses will respond to in reducing their overall legal risk. As I pointed out in the previous slide, mass market doesn't seem to shy away from it as much. When you see these e-motos and out-of-class e-bikes on Amazon and other platforms, they are generally sold and shipped by third parties. So that's the third-party sellers. Amazon, I don't know how much internally they're doing that intentionally, but that's really what we see. And that third-party mass market selling isn't really tracked as it is now. So we don't know the volume there, but that's where potential liability shifts may come into play here. And I think I crossed off all of the things that I wanted to talk about. Happy to talk more. I know there's more presenters, so we can always jump to doing that later on as well.
Peter, thank you. You're always so insightful, and I love how you always bring the data and the research forward. So thank you for all you do. Yeah, we do have two more presenters on this topic, and yeah, I just put into chat. Melanie Fry, our membership coordinator, sent me a message. We do have a link to the resources state by state policies off the NBDA website for e-bike rules. So go ahead. I just put that into chat. That is there for state laws. Speaker number 2, Clint Sandusky, e-bike expert, law enforcement patrol officer instructor, and a genuinely great human and a fantastic resource for our industry. Clint, thank you.
Thanks, Heather. Let me get this. So be in presenter mode.
It looks like it's still firing up. It's in the mode, but it's kind of seems like it might be stuck.
Let me do something here.
Okay.
We good to go?
Maybe stop sharing and try to reshare again.
Okay, real fast.
I think that'll be the ticket.
Once again, technology. Yep. Let me try one.
It looks like Clint, maybe your screen is frozen potentially as well. Bear with us, everyone.
Oh, sorry about that, folks. Let me try one more time.
It happens to all of us, Clint. It's the Zoom technology. It's gotten us it gets us sometimes. There we go. See, we
Oh,
third
okay.
time arm, right?
Okay. Well, thanks, Heather. And this may seem like we panelists have all gotten together beforehand, but it's so cool how we're all piggybacking off each other. So some of the stuff I'm going to cover has already been covered, but I'll go in more of into a law enforcement perspective, and especially state law. Jay and I had a wonderful conversation yesterday about federal law versus state law. And I just put into the chat, although that wasn't the best link and information, but to add to the confusion, in 2021, under the Infrastructure and Job Acts bill, in the transportation section, they created, for transportation purposes, the modern definition of an e-bike, including the 3 classes. So that just adds to the confusion. All right, I want to do an unofficial live survey, which you can put into the chat, and hopefully at the end, we can reveal the results. So this is a question to all you IBDs. Where do you think the real challenges lie? Is it with electric bicycles, electric motorcycles, both, or others? So if you could put that into the chat box, hopefully we'll get a chance to discuss that at the end. You've seen this slide from me before. There's a lot of different stakeholders involved, and I do believe, as I've mentioned it before in some bicycle retail articles, I do believe that bicycle shops still are the first line of defense when it comes to e-bike safety. And I'll talk about some of the other stakeholders here. However, I updated my belief on that. I don't know if any of you had a chance to read my article in the Bicycle Retailer magazine from last month, but I really do believe that parents are the ultimate line of defense in their kids' e-bike safety. So what a wonderful opportunity for you retailers when parents come in with their kids and they want to buy an e-bike, or maybe they mentioned e-motos. You get a chance to educate them. And I gave you some bullet points and other information of ways to better educate them. So let's get to some examples of some of the efforts out here. And here's law enforcement's effort. On the far left, the city of Carlsbad, which is down in Southern California, really at the epicenter of these e-bike issues. In fact, they spent $2 million a couple of years ago to address it. They've got something similar to People for Bikes as far as a chart. Unfortunately, and I've seen across California and other places, some of their information is incorrect. And so we have to notify them on that. The next two slides from Orange County Sheriff's in Florida, not California, and Highland Police Department, which is part of San Bernardino County Sheriff's in Southern California. I really like these charts where they make it quite clear with big pictures. This is what an e-bike is, and this is what an electric motorcycle is. So law enforcement and the cities are out there better educating the community as to what is and what is not an e-bike, like Jay mentioned earlier. And of course, I know Aaron had mentioned, I believe this, and this is the last slide on the right is from Irvine Police Department. They are out there really aggressively pulling traffic stops, citing the kids, towing, storing, impounding these illegal electric motorcycles, which we'll talk about in a second. Law enforcement is trying to do its part. I use California as an example because California, as we know, is at the forefront of e-bike issues. You could say Florida, New Jersey, New York as well, but really California. And I want to highlight these 5 bills, not go into them in too great detail, but these first two I combined together. And you probably heard that for Marin County, which is in Northern California, and San Diego County, which is in Southern California, a bill was passed. It's in law. They call it the Electric Bicycle Safety Pilot Program, where cities can adopt local age restriction ordinances that are temporary. Then they have to submit through the county their findings to the legislature, and we'll see what they do. I am a little worried, coming from a law enforcement perspective, how much enforcement will there be, and will there be compliance? I think there's going to be a lot of non-compliance. SB 586, and I think Aaron kind of mentioned this. So for the first time in California, it has a new definition of what an off-highway electric motorcycle is. Therefore, it's not legal on the street, and in many cases, not legal off-road, because a lot of these things, like the Surons, they don't have a VIN, therefore they can't get registered, etc. I can tell you as a side note, I found that the state of Florida, in one of their bills, is considering for the first time defining an electric motorcycle. So states are finally giving law enforcement the tools to get these things off the street. SB 1271, I know Jay and Mike will like this. It covers electric bicycles and powered mobility devices. It gets into battery safety, UL standards, also the European standards, gives the state fire marshal the ability to set up rules. We'll see how that plays out from a practical standpoint as far as safety and who enforces it, but at least it's on the books now. And the last one kind of reinforces some of these other things. AB 875, it's a vehicle removal section. So it says anything that is not a legal e-bike as defined is therefore a vehicle. It can be towed, or any person under 16 years of age cannot ride a class 3 e-bike and hence subject to being towed. So those are some of the key legislative efforts, now law in California. Also in California, maybe some of you have heard of the Mineta Transportation Institute, part of San Jose State. They were tasked through a bill that became law to study e-bike safety, very comprehensive. They interviewed dozens and dozens of people from the bicycle industry, law enforcement, healthcare. I was fortunate and honored to be one of those. It's a long read, 210 pages. I'll have a QR code on the next slide, but very informative. You may not agree with some of their findings. In the QR code, there is also a link to their brief, which is only 2 pages. What I really like, and I highlighted it, and they even mentioned this a lot, what we've been talking about, they say complicating the issue of electric bicycle safety, many devices that people perceive to be electric bicycles are actually not legal electric bicycles because, and you can fill in the blanks, they're vehicles, they're motorized bicycle. I mean, they're motorized or electric motorcycles. I think Aaron had mentioned the legislative efforts in New Jersey, still in the Senate, and you can see that bill number up top. But what this bill would do would eliminate the current electric bicycle classifications, which are only class 1 and class 2. They would redefine electric bicycles as motorized bicycles. Hence, under the apply section, many of the the motor moped style regulations, there would be additional requirements: driver's license, registration, insurance, etc. That could be a big hit for the bicycle industry. On the criminal justice side, and this is back in Southern California, this is from the DA's office in Riverside County. You can see the headline. This was a public service advisory. Parental criminal liability for reckless e-bike use by their teens. In fact, in the article, it goes on to say that a parent could be held criminally liable for child endangerment. And if the circumstances were great enough, that's a felony. They could go to state prison. So the criminal justice system is starting to crack down on this as well. So important last question to you bicycle retailers. How do you, and this, if you could put this in the chat as well, or we could talk about it during the open discussion. How are you currently educating your customers between the differences of legal or non-compliant electric bicycles and or electric motorcycles? And I know what you're saying, and we've talked about this, some of the other panelists. What's in it for me? The bottom line, hey, either continuing or increasing sales or decreasing sales because of increasing restrictions, community misperceptions, or like in New Jersey or wherever, redefining e-bikes as mopeds or some type of other vehicle. So my final thoughts, and I want to be clear on this. Is there unsafe, illegal, and or reckless e-bike rider behavior happening across the United States and beyond? Absolutely. Are well-meaning lawmakers and local officials sometimes overreacting to reported e-bike incidents with imposing stricter, sometimes unlawful regulations? Yes, they are. Based on my personal observations, law enforcement and media reports, I do believe that electric motorcycles are now the real challenge. Are there e-bike challenges yet? But I really do believe it's the electric motorcycles. I also continue to believe that e-bike rider behavior should be addressed first through education and enforcement before resorting to possible over-regulation. Thank you.
Clint, thank you. Yeah, and Clint's contact information is on here. He's always a great resource, and Clint welcomes you to reach out to him. I know at any time. Lots of great questions coming in. Peter Woolery, I appreciate you answering some of the Q&As that you did, so thank you for that. There's some great conversation happening in chat too. I see Texas 87 Cycles has made some great comments. Aaron has chimed in. So some stuff, really great stuff in the chat. So please take a look at that. Any other panel members have thoughts at this time? Otherwise, I'll turn it over to our last speaker. All right, well, let's keep it moving forward. I apologize. I know we're close to time, but please hang with us. It's such an important conversation today. So our third speaker today, Mike Fritz from Human Powered Solutions. Mike, always great to have you with us.
Thank you, Heather, and hello, everybody. It's good to see everyone on the panel. And thank you to the panel members that have gone before me here. You've done an excellent job of elucidating the issue relative to regulations, laws, requirements, specifications, performance attributes, et cetera, et cetera. I'm going to take a step back a little bit here and put on my professor's hat and talk about the underlying issue that we're dealing with here. Why? Why are we upset about this? Why are regulators looking at it? Clearly the answer is safety. But what is it about speed and power that so dramatically influences the safety of our customers and riders out on the streets? So I'm going to lecture a little bit about physics. It basically all comes down to an energy equation. A body traveling at speed has energy. We oftentimes call it momentum or inertia. It's the dissipation of that inertia that results in damage and injury. Basically, when you're traveling at a given speed and you go faster, your energy increases, but it increases more than it does the linear speed. It increases by an exponential factor. I did some basic calculations just looking at the difference between a class 2 speed limit and a class 3 speed limit, whether or not it's motor powered or supplemented by rider input or what. But the energy contained in the system going from 20 miles an hour to 28 miles an hour more than doubles. And that energy basically is what causes the injury. A body moving at speed that comes to a sudden stop results in the dissipation of that energy. Motor vehicles have got numerous design features built into them to help mitigate the potential injury to the driver. We have crumple zones in cars. Motorcycle riders that are required to wear helmets utilize their safety devices as energy absorption techniques to minimize the energy that needs to be absorbed by the human body. The features and designs of those vehicles also incorporate features to help avoid injuries in terms of braking performance, turn signals, other required safety equipment. Bicycle riders generally are not offered those levels of safety. The mechanisms, the features, etc., do not mitigate the dissipation of energy that a bicycle rider generally has to absorb when he comes to a sudden stop at speed. And it's that the absorption of that energy that causes broken bones and lacerations and concussions and things of that nature. So the regulators are basically trying to develop or mandate the design, development, and distribution of products that are safe in the sense that we want to mitigate the potential injury by restricting the amount of energy that might be resident in that system traveling at speed. So it's all an energy equation. Faster is more dangerous, and faster in the absence of energy dissipation technologies is a significant hazard to our riders. And we all support and agree that electric bikes and electric mobility can ameliorate a lot of the issues that we're facing as society in terms of parking and congestion and pollution, et cetera, et cetera. But we need to do it such that we're protecting our riders either through usage regulations that require safety equipment such as helmets, or vehicle restrictions that restricts the speeds that can be achieved, because that energy equation again increases the energy available exponentially by the speed. So basically, it's let's look at why we're doing this. We're doing this because speed kills. I mean, we've oftentimes heard that in traffic safety public service announcements, and it's more critical considering a person on a bicycle, which is generally speaking a fragile lightweight device. It's not a motor vehicle. It's not an automobile. It doesn't have all of those features designed to help protect the rider in the event of an accident. So the best way we can do it is by making sure that the attributes, the performance attributes of the products that we distribute allow for safe usage in the environment. So I'll keep it short.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you. Yeah, and again, still some great conversation happening in the chat over here. We don't want specialty bicycle retailers to drive away the fastest growing new segment of customers, but we do want to make sure that specialty bicycle retailers are aware of what's happening as far as federal regulation and make sure that you understand your risks with selling and servicing anything that's not a bicycle. Um, every retailer is different and willing to assume different risks, but it is our diligence to make sure you are aware of the risks that are out there and that you are exposed to. We know it's an important category, and that is why several of the panel members on today's call are involved in these conversations that are happening with municipalities to make sure we can advocate for the safe products so you can continue to sell those. So this is a developing conversation that I think we all in the industry are very interested in protecting the products that are driving new customers to our sport. We just have to make sure we're just mitigating risk as much as possible along the way. Clint, I saw you unmute. Did you want to chime in? Yeah.
No, I will. I just real fast. In the chat, I calculated the unofficial live survey. I found it to be a little interesting, kind of different from what I believe. But the question was, where do you IBDs think the real challenges lie with electric bicycles? No comments on that, so 0. Electric motorcycles, we had 2, say, e-motos. Both five respondents said it was both, and then 2 other. So very interesting.
Excellent. Thank you, Clint, for that summary. And Kunal from Bosch did just post into chat a great resource for statewide laws as well. So Kunal, thank you for that. Erin, would you like to chime in? Yeah.
Yeah, I to your comment and then your unofficial survey, Clint, I think that it's, I think e-motos are going to be easier for us to deal with and regulate because they're just not bicycles. And I think that will become less of a problem because it's easier for us to use existing legal frameworks to regulate them in the first place. So in New York, for example, they're already illegal. They don't have a VIN. If they did have a VIN, they would have to be registered. We went through this during the pandemic because all of a sudden we saw a huge influx of electric mopeds that did not have VINs. They were this weird crossover category, and we were extremely effective at eliminating them. We no longer have electric mopeds that aren't registered and licensed with the DMV. That just they very little exist, and a lot of that was enforcement over people selling them at dealers that were selling these devices, and a lot of that was education. And I think these e-motos will have a similar ability to regulate and enforce. The out of class bikes, it's much harder because they fit that, you don't know when they're on the road if they're illegal or not. And unless they're actually going 35 miles per hour on a street, there isn't anything we can do about them while they're there. And so it's much harder for us to I think that's going to be a continuing big problem for us. Slap some pedals on it, and then it gets around enforcement efforts.
Well, Erin, if I can just expand upon that. So as of last year in California, they added a new subsection D to the vehicle code, the definition of an e-bike, CVC 312.5. It said any a thing that doesn't meet the definition of an electric bicycle per the code is a vehicle, but they just left it there hanging. So we have in California legally compliant e-bikes, and now the new law, electric motorcycles. And in between, the legislature didn't address that, so it's still the Wild West, kind of like you're mentioning, Erin.
Yeah, are those vehicles now motor vehicle? Like, are they motor vehicles with requirements around motor vehicles? Because that's kind of what we had with the moped situation. They were motor vehicles, and so they needed a VIN number, whatever it was. In fact, you could really register anything in New York as long as it has a VIN. And once people started to realize that, the manufacturers started including VIN numbers on them. Do you know if the vehicle law requires those, like now they're called vehicles? Does that mean that they're just a thing that with a VIN that needs to be registered?
Well, that's to be seen from the enforcement side and also the criminal justice side. Once people are cited and they end up going to court, what the courts determine. So um, to be determined.
Excellent question. Well, everyone, I appreciate everyone's input. I appreciate our panel members who have volunteered their time today. To our attendees, thank you for answering the call. Fantastic questions throughout today's event. Really did give us lots of information that we could bounce off one another and share. The NBDA, we exist to support specialty bicycle retailers. If we can't get an answer to a question, we have in our community many experts who can help us get answers. So if anyone listening has questions, has concerns, please reach out to me, heather@nbda.com, and we'll make sure we get that resource to you. Kunal, thanks again for that fantastic resource with the state laws. That's fantastic. Thank you. Jay Townley, thank you for kicking it off. Clint, Aaron, Mike, Michael, thank you for joining. To all those who attended, thank you for being here. We appreciate you. Our next event is Tuesday, April 7th. It's at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, and that'll be our hour-long format as well. Still lots of great questions coming in, and we appreciate everyone's attendance today. I hope you all have a fantastic rest of your day, and hope to see you all again soon. Thank you once again.